So we hear very often it's all going according to plan. It's not. The plan's failing. And Zelensky and the Trump administration and the West and the Trump administration are kind of getting along better than ever, particularly Zelensky and the Trump administration. So the plan's failing. And we see that reflected in what Russian leaders are saying. Okay, here's the quote of the day by Kaya Kallas. Time is now on Ukraine's side. For a long time, you would have thought it would be weird to say that time was on Ukraine's side, but it looks like it really is on Ukraine's side. It's very interesting to watch. Okay, this is already the second phone call in just 2 days. This was yesterday. So according to the Ukrainian president, the conversation was very productive and focused on topics that they had agreed to discuss earlier. While Kyiv is strengthening ties with Washington, the Kremlin is in panic over rumors about possible Tomahawk missiles. Yeah, the Russians do not want them to get that. Now, Trump knows what he's doing here in leveraging that, and I'll show you that in just a moment. President Zelensky confirmed that he will also meet with President Trump in Washington later this week. 3 times in a week? I mean, it's got to be a record here, right? Now, Trump says he's ready to give Ukraine Tomahawks if Russia doesn't stop the war. Okay, there's only audio here, but we're going to listen to this. Listen.
They need Patriots very badly. They'd like to have Tomahawks. That's a step up. They'd like to have Tomahawks. We talked about that. And so we'll see. Well, I don't know. I might have to speak to Russia, to be honest with you, about Tomahawks. Do they want to have Tomahawks going in their direction? I don't think so. I think I might have to speak to Russia about Tomahawks. Do they want to go in their direction? It's Trump's way of leveraging things, I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong. Tell me what you think in the comments below, but that's what it seems like to me. Trump will give Putin a chance to end the war before sending Tomahawk cruise missiles to Ukraine for deep strikes against Russia. Putin will refuse. I think this is legitimate commentary. I think that's fair. That's the way I perceive things will go. And so, yeah, President Trump has once again threatened Putin, says Kira Rudik. And she's a member of the Verkhovna Rada. And we hope that there's a clear understanding that threats only matter when consequences follow. That's right, which is why it doesn't matter when Medvedev lashes out at Trump again, warning that any delivery of Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine could end very badly for everyone, especially Trump himself. Okay, consequences have to matter. Now, she put somebody else put this picture of barking dogs barking through a fence, and they're tough when they're barking at each other with the fence. But when the fence leaves, they kind of all scatter. Like, I don't want to be that tough. So we don't know what's going to happen, whether it'll be this kind of scenario or whether it'll be meaningful. But they are talking. They are making progress. 3 times in a week they've been talking. And you'll see when I show you with the Russian responses here about things, they have this mixture of trying to blame Europe and talk tough. And okay, Financial Times says Russia is paying European saboteurs in cryptocurrency to cover its tracks. So some of these like drone things are happening, and we don't know exactly where it's coming from or why it's happening or those kind of things. Okay, the head of Poland's National Security Bureau said that Moscow is funding hybrid attacks across the EU using crypto. This method, he explains, helps Russian intelligence avoid payment tracing. Okay, so yeah, that could be very well what's going on with some of those hybrid attacks. I don't know that that's not the case, and I'm not 100% sure that it's there, but it's incredibly plausible. Meanwhile, G7 countries are preparing an oil strike against the Kremlin. Well, that's a tough word in the time of war. They're not going to blow it up, but Russia could lose half of its oil revenues, around $80 billion a year. According to Reuters, G7 finance ministers are drafting new measures aimed at draining Moscow's war budget, including additional tariffs on countries that continue to buy Russian oil. If the plan works, Russia's oil reserves could drop by nearly a half, from 7.3 to 5 million barrels per day, leading to losses of about 76 billion annually. G7 is also urging Saudi Arabia and the UAE to boost production while pushing India and Turkey to reduce imports of Russian oil. The Saudis want to take over the Russian market, so that's not much of a problem. They seem to be interested in doing that sort of thing. So we'll see how that plays out. The European Union has already mobilized 800 million to support Ukraine this winter. We're working on an extra 100 million for generators and shelters and cold weather gear. I can also announce today the first 10 million to set up the special tribunal for the crime of aggression. And this was from Kaya Kallas. She was announcing that just today. Okay, Russian Black Sea Fleet submarines surfaced off France's Brittany coast. Now, it's not menacing. Its fuel was leaking into its hold. So NATO stationed a French frigate to track the B-261 Novorossiysk, built in 2014, now operating on the surface in Atlantic waters. So we see that there. And then Mark Rutte was joking about it, that this is the hunt for the nearest mechanic, which is a reference to the movie, The Hunt for Red October. So, okay, so, but those Europeans, they're being mean. That's the problem. The Europeans are being mean. Well, the Russians are saying things like that. The Europeans just, they just hate the West. And they have other reasons to explain just why the plan is failing. So let's start to look at some of these reasons. So Andrei Kartapolov, head of the Russian State Duma's Defense Committee, advised President Trump to call Putin more often to know what to do. Quote, if Trump wanted to help, he would listen to what our president says. Unfortunately, lately, Trump listens to European leaders and Zelensky, not Mr. Putin. That's why problems arise in understanding the essence of what is happening, the root causes of what is happening, and what needs to be done. Therefore, my advice to Mr. Trump is to call Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin more often, and then he will know what to do, when, and how. You know that Trump doesn't actually work for you, right? Like, that's not how this works. Okay, that's just one take on this. And then you have Solovyov, who once claimed that Ukraine was near collapse and now admitting that there's no exhaustion in sight. Quote, we underestimated what is happening. We thought NATO just sent finished products. But now the military-industrial complex is outside Ukraine. Our strikes aren't decisive. Foreigners are actively joining Ukraine's ranks. There should be no illusions. Like, he's ginning up some of the drama here. And then this guy, let's hear what he has to say. Those blaming Putin, not Russia, for the war just don't understand Russians. Putin is only giving them foreign atrocities that they demand. The ones that make their own misery seem tolerable by comparison. So here's Sergei Karganov saying, I think we need to act much more decisively. I hope that during the year 2025, we will move up the escalation ladder. Yeah, that's what his hope is, and force our American opponents to crawl away and finish off the Europeans. So again, they know how to talk tough. So they're taking all kinds of evasive measures in what they're saying. Peskov was saying this: the Russian side continues to say that we are ready for a peaceful settlement. It's those bad Ukrainians and the Europeans that are backing them. But the Europeans and the Kyiv regime are showing absolutely no desire to do anything in this direction. Yeah, that's the way that they're framing this, as if Russia is coming to the table cleanly, and it's just that, it's the Europeans blocking them. Radoslaw Sikorski, the foreign minister from Poland, says Russia peacefully invades and bombs Ukraine, and in return, Ukrainian and European Nazis cause war by daring to resist. That's what it amounts to. Okay, Lukashenko is getting in the act. Lukashenko says Ukraine could disappear as a state. He also urged Zelensky to reach an agreement with Putin as soon as possible. We must act urgently, said the Belarusian peacemaker, shaking his head, because, as he put it, no matter what, Russia is advancing on the front. Actually, Russia's not advancing. Russia's been blunted recently, but okay. And then if Trump wants golden statues of himself all over Eastern Europe and Russia itself, he has a chance to do it now, cheaply and easily, says Jay in Kyiv, right? Okay, Trump puts tomahawks on the table as an ultimatum to Moscow. That's what we're talking about. That's probably what Trump and Zelensky were talking about yesterday, probably what they'll be talking about at the end of the week. We'll see how this all plays out. We'll keep an eye on it. If you're interested in this story, consider hitting the subscribe button. I do these every day. I'll be back tomorrow. Zelensky and Trump are likely to meet at the White House on Friday. Now, in a historic moment, all kinds of things were going on today. The NATO meeting, and I'll show you more about that. And then what happened in Jerusalem. I think it was Jerusalem, where the Knesset is. I know it's in Israel in the Knesset, and then in Egypt. So this is a historic moment. All surviving Israeli hostages have been freed after 2 years in captivity. I just did a video on this. Go back one video. I'll show you the whole story. I'm not going to belabor that. So there was this, Trump was speaking at Israel's parliament, and then now Trump is speaking in Egypt. So participants of the peace summit in Egypt today, all kinds of world leaders, European and Middle Eastern. And then there was this loud explosion in Cairo. This was part of the summit. It wasn't part of the summit, but it was during that time of the summit. A loud explosion in Cairo ahead of the Gaza summit. A column of smoke rose over the Egyptian capital, alarming residents. Probably the noise was caused by construction workers, and the smoke turned out to be dust. But you can understand how, given the circumstances, people would have been a little nervous about what was going on there. Now, the Gaza Peace Summit in Cairo, Lavrov was asked why Russia was not invited to the Gaza Peace Summit, even though it played the role of a mediator in the conflict. From Lavrov's answer, it follows that Russia was not invited at all. I can only note, he says, that the invitations were sent by the summit hosts. This is the Egyptian leadership, which, as reported, coordinated its actions with other Arab initiators, but above all with the United States, hinting that it was the United States that's the problem. They're the ones that didn't want us there because, they're bad. Okay. Meanwhile, this is what it looked like in Israel, and I'm not going to show any more of this. Go back to that video if you want to see that. Now, there's also a NATO summit going on at the same time. NATO has announced the start of its Steadfast Noon nuclear deterrence air exercises. No live nuclear weapons will be used during the drills, but recently the UK, US, and other NATO countries carried out an air operation near Russia amid a series of drone incidents. This not only provides us with valuable intelligence to improve our operational awareness, but it also sends a powerful signal of NATO unity to our adversaries, particularly Russia, according to UK Defense Secretary John Healey. Now, Zelensky spoke to the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, said Russia has once again failed to carry out Putin's order to capture Donbas. In summer, they told the U.S. and others it would be done by October or November. Instead, our forces are moving forward. And that's true. The Ukrainians are actually the ones gaining some ground here most recently. And again, Putin will say, we'll have it by this deadline. And then that deadline passes and they move on this deadline. And then that deadline passes and they move on this deadline. So they're, at the pace that they're going, they're years away from being able to capture just Donbas. Okay, Presidential Chief Yermak confirms Ukraine's delegation, led by Prime Minister Yulia Servanenko and NSDC Secretary Umarov, is headed to Washington. The agenda includes strengthening air defense and strike capabilities, boosting energy resilience ahead of winter, and pushing for new sanctions, and probably tomahawks. I mean, that's what's on everybody's mind here. Zelensky said at the 71st annual session of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, there are delegations from almost 50 countries here, from Europe, the whole alliance, the Middle East, and other regions. This matters. We now see that the war in the Middle East is finally ending, and it is. It really is. After so many victims, there is a real chance for peace. It was difficult, but it is happening. Russia's war in Europe remains the biggest source of global instability, and it depends on all of you whether this war will end too. Putin can be forced into peace, just like any other, and I'll call it a T. You know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah. Putin can be forced to peace. There just has to be the will to get there. The Ukrainian Foreign Minister, Sabiha, confirms that 7 more countries are ready to join the joint purchase of U.S.-made weapons for Ukraine through the NATO mechanisms, and it looks like they're going to get everything that they need through this kind of mechanism, or much of what they need at least. Ukrainian drones startup just raised $17.9 million from U.S. investors to let one operator control 20-plus drones. I can't tell you how big this is going to be. When you have swarming drones, it's going to be like drones changed warfare, and then FPV drones changed warfare, and swarming drones are the next big change in my estimation. Swarmer's AI has already run 82,000 combat missions, providing the technology works before scaling production, proving that the technology works before scaling production. So that's going to be the wave of the future. This is the former director of the CIA talking about this. Is Petraeus talking about with more funding, Ukraine could build 4 to 5 million drones this year versus 1.5 million last year. And it was a big thing a year ago when there was projecting like, we think we can build 1 million drones this year. And now they're talking about 4 to 5 million drones. It's pretty incredible. North Korea has likely received technical help from Russia for its submarine development, South Korean defense minister warns. And of course, Putin is providing plenty of bad things to North Korea to do bad things to the rest of the world. And this has led South Korea, Seoul is going to build its first public nuclear shelter by 2028. According to the Korea Herald, the facility will be equipped with ventilation and water supply systems and will be able to accommodate up to 1,020 people, not much, but something. In peacetime, it will function as a fitness center. So South Korea is now thinking about this because what North Korea is doing, because, well, I'm just saying Russia seems to be the locus of the problems being spread like Johnny Appleseed distributing apples throughout the world. All right, my friends, that's all that I have for this video. Tell me what you think about this. Was this helpful to you? Did it help you understand some things? If it did, consider subscribing. Please place your comments. I try to read as many as I can. Thank you for the time, the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.